Hello, and welcome back to Things I Want My Kids to Know with me, Ted Bradshaw. This being the podcast where I talk about the things that I've picked up over the years as a therapist in particular, but also just as a person that I would want my kids to know. Today, we are going to talk about fixed beliefs. So, the idea that we might hold ideas about ourselves that are either very black and white or feel that they are fixed. So, for example, I am no good at running or swimming or drawing or dancing, whatever it might be. And frankly, the reason this is on my mind for today is today I've watched my third sports day of the week. So from my three kids, there were individual sports days, and we've had our third one today. And so it's been on my mind a lot. Before I get diving into why and how we might think about that, I just want to take a moment to just say thank you. Thank you for listening, and thank you for watching, however it is that you take this in, because this episode marks the beginning of a new era, I think, in that I had sort of sketched out a few ideas for what I might cover in this podcast, but I had no idea how it was going to go. Absolutely no idea. And I suppose that's kind of a fixed belief. I think I had it in my head that, I don't know, I'm not somebody that can make this kind of thing work, but maybe there was a flexibility in that enough for me to be able to give myself permission to give it a go. And having given a go, it's gone all right. And the reason it's gone all right is because you lot have listened. So whether this is your first episode and you're just dipping your toe in, or whether you've been listening for a while, thank you. Thank you for doing so. It has allowed me to give myself some permission to carry on. And I've really enjoyed it so far. And it has felt like something that's been worthwhile. So now we're in sort of uncharted territory in terms of topics. I'm making it up on the fly, which I've been doing all the way through, in fairness. But also I've really appreciated people dropping me a line here and there with suggestions for topics. So I've got a few penciled in my mind, and just an opportunity to say that if you have any ideas or anything you'd really like me to cover either in more detail or something I've not done so far, drop me a line. So it's pod@cbtted.co.uk if you have any ideas at all. All right. Thank you again. Let's get going, shall we? So, fixed beliefs. What I've been thinking about watching sports days. So I've got a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 10-year-old, all doing slightly different things. And it always makes me think, sports day, because when I was a kid, I didn't really like it. I think particularly in secondary school rather than primary school, but even in primary school I was a bit self-conscious. And some of that was to do with the idea that I had formed a view of myself as no good at a lot of sporting activities, and particularly anything that involved running. So I am no good at running. I can't run. So I just want to take a little moment to talk about that language. So I can't run is a black and white way of looking at things. I can or I can't. And it's unfair and it's untrue in that regard. I could run. Of course I do. My legs would move. What I suppose would be a more accurate way of putting it, if I was talking to that little version of myself, is you can. You're just not as fast as some of the other people. And you don't particularly like it. That would be a more accurate way of looking at it. But that's not often what we allow ourselves. Instead, what we form is more black and white a lot of the time. Sometimes that's about sporting things, but it can be about anything. I'm no good at maths. I can't draw. I can't sing for toffee. I can't dance. I can't swim. I'm no good at spelling. That kind of thing. We tend to talk about ourselves in those black and white, quite extreme terms. And what that can mean is that it can be limiting. It can mean that if you view yourself as no good at something, that you don't want to give it another go. Because what's the point, for a start? And it can feel, particularly for me, sports day in particular, felt humiliating, embarrassing. it felt kind of public. It felt like everybody could see how rubbish I was. In reality, stepping back from that and seeing it from a distance, a lot of that was my own self-consciousness. I felt like people were watching, but actually in reality people were mostly there to just watch their own kids. And the other people in my class, we would keep, track of who did what, but it wasn't as judgmental as I felt it was, partly because I was very judgmental of myself in that regard. I'm just going to pause and say at this stage that I've got a fan on. I can see in the background, for those of you watching, that the leaves of my little plant are shaking around. I also hope it's not interfering with how well you can hear me. I've got my window open, got my fan on, because it is roasting. Sitting and watching Sports Day this morning, it was like 30 degrees for them, bless them. It was baking. So just thinking about fixed ways of viewing ourselves and what that can mean, I just want to say a little bit more about my own story, I suppose, because that was in my mind. So my own, what's the word I'm going to use here? My own sort of shift in my perspective on how black and white this is that I can or cannot run happened over time. But today, what am I now? I'm 38 now. Today, I believe that I can run. I can run, and I'm not actually particularly bad at it. And that has come from a few different places. First of all, I've had an opportunity to reassess it, to try it out again. So particularly when I went away to university, I did do more exercise in my late teens. I did particularly sort of bike riding and would say yes to a few more things. And from that, found that I wasn't as bad as I thought I was. And not only that, but I got fitter. So the fact that I got fitter meant that I could do it better. So it not only changed because I found I wasn't as bad as I thought, it changed because my ability changed. My ability actually changed. To the point that when I lived on my own for a while, up in North Yorkshire, I started running just because it was an easy thing to do exercise-wise on my own. And I found that, all right, I could do it. First run, I remember the first run I ever went out to, I lived near York Racecourse for a while, and I ran down to the racecourse, and I only made it to the racecourse before I had to walk. And then it was about a 3-mile loop I was trying to do. I just got a bit further each time until I could make it all the way round without having to stop. And that was a big deal for me, massive deal for me. And it carried on from there to the point that I ended up doing a marathon when, this was about 10 years ago now. Yeah, my wife was pregnant with our first. She's about 6 months pregnant, trying to cheer me on for this marathon. And, I didn't get a particularly impressive time, but I did I ran a marathon. So this idea that I can't run, that this little version of me had, it wasn't true anymore. And maybe it wasn't true to begin with. And I think we can do this to ourselves about a lot of different things. I've given you some examples already. But the effect of it sometimes is we can limit ourselves. So if I feel like I can't run, and therefore it's embarrassing and humiliating, and I feel maybe ashamed of that, the natural reaction is to not want to do it. So you don't put yourself in that position again. And that's true regardless of what it is, whether you feel you're not a good dancer, whether singing, maths, spelling, all of those examples I've given, and 1,000 others. You just don't do it because it feels embarrassing. But because you don't do it, you don't get a chance to practice. So actually, in my, early 20s, when I still thought I'm not a runner, part of that was true because, I'm not, or the view of myself is not very good at it, was kind of true because I didn't practice. So why would I be getting any better? We don't allow ourselves the context, I think, sometimes. And sometimes it's not an issue. Like if you don't want to run and you've got a view of yourself as not a runner, then maybe that doesn't limit your life in any way. But maybe there'd be some things that you would like to take part in or would like to do that you are limited by because of a black and white view of yourself. I can't draw means that you can't do Pictionary. I don't know why, that's the first example in my head. Can't do Pictionary. I don't know what you think about this, but having kids has been quite interesting. Because they ask you to do stuff. They ask you to join in with stuff that they're not self-conscious about, particularly when they're small. So my wife, for example, would sing to our children, despite the fact that she had a belief about herself that she couldn't sing. But turns out she can sing. She can sing. It's not black and white. She can do it. And actually, she's not as bad as she thought, partly through repetition and practice, actually. Or drawing, or painting. Particularly, it's been good for me in a sort of sporting way. They always want me to join in and stuff. They want me to do the parents' race. And this is our fifth year. And to begin with, I really didn't want to do it because I thought it'd be humiliating. I thought it'd be awful. And then today, I've done 3 this week. No, I haven't. That's not true. One of them was an egg and spoon race. I've done 2 running races this week. I did all right. Not too bad. In amongst the pack. If there are things that you would like to do, or you'd like to feel less hesitant about, but you don't feel like you can because you have a view of yourself as not good at, the things I would want my kids to know in particular is that some helpful phrases to get around that are, I'm not as good as other people right now. So tackling 2 things. 1, that it's not black and white. And 2, that these things aren't necessarily fixed and permanent. Those are the 2 things that we want to be able to do something with. So if my kids have a view of themselves at any point about their ability at something, I'm no good at this, I would want to be able to tell them. I'm smiling to myself right now because you know what it's like trying to tell your kids anything, right? But I would want to tell them, it's not that you are no good at it. You can do it. What you mean is you feel like you're not as good as other people. Or maybe you feel like you're not good enough. But it's not that you can't. It's that right now you find it a bit harder than other people do. Or you're not as good as X, Y, and Z person in your class or in your school. But that doesn't mean you are no good at it. There are some things here, or some elements of this, that you can do. You can do. It's not 0 out of 10. Maybe it's 3 or 4. Maybe it's 1. But it's not 0. That's one thing I'd want them to know. And the second thing is for now. Right now, this isn't your strongest suit. Right now, this might not be the thing that you are best at. Right now, there might be loads of other people that are better than you. But that might change over the course of time. With practice, with growth, with development, things might change. But it won't change if you don't try. It's, in my view, kind of hearing that coming out of my mouth, it is okay to not want to try. There are some things you don't want to get better at. You don't need to draw if you don't want to. It's okay to want to avoid maths if you just want to use your calculator and stuff instead. Spellings, it's all right if that's hard for you, and you don't have to work at that if you don't want to. There's ways around that. Same with sport. But I would want that to feel like a choice. I'd want that to feel like a choice. Because when it's, I'm no good at it or I can't, that's not a choice. It's a fixed state. I can't and therefore I won't, if you like. Whereas if it's like, I can, but I don't really want to, that's a different thing. That's a different thing. And if you can look at things with that flexible approach, that flexible mindset, then maybe you have more options available to you. I'm pausing a little bit here because I'm reaching for a way of summarising this, I think. And I think my best way is to maybe just explain it as if one of my kids were here. Because I know sometimes they feel disheartened by I don't know. Yeah, when they've tried something and it's not gone very well. The key things are, it's not that you're no good. It's not a 0 out of 10. And even if it were, that doesn't mean that those things can't change. If there's something you want to do that you like, but you're being limited by because you feel that you're not good at it, give yourself permission to practice. Give yourself permission to not be very good at it for a while. Genuinely, this running example, I don't think I'd have got as far as I did were it not for the fact that I was living on my own and I could go for a run on my own, knowing that there was nobody judging my performance except for me. Nobody. It was kind of liberating in a way that I could give this a crack. Other things I've seen change for people have been a little bit of teaching or a little bit of coaching, a little bit of encouragement. So the other thing that I did with running was I gave myself permission to try some stuff. So I read a couple of things about running. I listened to a couple of podcasts and stuff about what people think and what helps. And that helped me think about my form. And that meant that I didn't get quite so out of breath. So it was a little bit of information. When you feel you're no good at something and you feel humiliated by it, you just want to shrink. You want to cover your ears and you want to say, leave me alone, I don't want to know. I'm too ashamed of myself. But if you can cut yourself some slack, maybe you get to learn something. And in learning something, you get better. And in getting better, you gain some confidence and you start to undo some of these beliefs. With drawing, it might be, well, I went once on a visual facilitation course and it was one of the best things I've ever done for my own creative outlet, I suppose, because this wonderful fella called John McNestry, actually, I'll give him a shout out here. I think he still runs this course. And he just said to us, look, everybody can draw. Everybody can make some basic shapes. And that's what we're going to think about with this drawing. We're not going to think about it as artistic, if you like. We're just going to think about basic shapes that you can put together that look like something. So he taught us how to draw a person with a circle and then like a little upside down U. And that was it, as a person. And you can use that to express what you're trying to express. Look at that, you can draw a person. It might not be a perfect person, but it's maybe better than you thought. And he taught us some specific ways of doing that. And you could see people start to maybe unclench and go, oh, I can do this. Simply from somebody showing them how to do it. And this is just a massive part of what keeps fixed beliefs going, is we don't allow ourselves to be a learner. To say, yeah, you know what, I'm not great at this. But maybe I can learn. I hope that has made sense to you today. And what I suppose I'd like to leave you with is a question or two, which is, what are the things that you say about yourself that are in black and white terms or in fixed terms? The things that you say about yourself that are, I am no good at, I have never been good at, I will never be good at. Maybe some of those are acceptable to you because you don't want to do them anyway. But if there's any of those that limit your choices or what you feel you can have a go at, I'd like you to have a think about, if you were thinking about this in a way that said, you know what, I might not be brilliant at it now, but I might be able to improve. Even if I never become brilliant, I might be able to improve. If there's any of that for you somewhere, I want you to think about a way in which you might practice. Give yourself permission to practice. You don't have to do it in a public way. You can do it in a private way, a personal way that's just for you. And if that helps you give yourself that permission and that little playground, then great. that's allowed. That's all right. If you do, I'd love to know how you get on. So thank you for listening. I hope it's been helpful. If you do give something a try, let me know what you do. Either drop a little comment or send me an email, pod@cbtted.co.uk. There's all the usual ways of getting some more. You can find me at cbtted everywhere: Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, others. And if you're getting something out of this, drop me a little review or drop me a little like or tell me what you got out of it. It really helps me keep myself going. And if you're up for it, there's the opportunity to join as a subscriber via Substack. All the links are in the show notes. And you can get some bonus content while you're at it. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.